विमलकलाश्रयाभिनवसृष्टिमहाजननी भरिततनुश्च पञ्चमुखगुप्तरुचिर्जनक तदुभययामलस्फुरितभावविसर्गमयम् हृदयमनुत्तरामृतकुलं मम संस्फुरतात् निराशंसात् पूर्णाद् अहमिति पुरा भासयति यद् द्विशाखामाशास्ते तदनु च विभक्तुं निजकलाम् स्वरूपादुन्मेष प्रसरणनिमेष स्थितिजुषस् तदद्वैतं वन्दे परमशिवशक्त्यात्मनिखिलम्। जय अभिनव गुप्ता, जय Swami Lakshman Ji, and thank you, Sunil. I am very happy today. I'm really happy today. I have really no words how happy you young scholars have made me. I have really no words. I wish you could really understand how I am feeling today. I have taught for 3 decades in different continents, and as a teacher, you can understand our life is to leave the legacy of these teachings behind, find new generation of people who can appreciate what was taught by Acharya Abhinavagupta more than 1,000 years ago. But seeing this group of people makes me feel that we are waiting for 10,000 Abhinavaguptas. I hope and I'm confident that this young generation will only continue to study further these things, beside doing so many other amazing things, of course. And we do not have to feel the sense of loss. You know, just like all the Kashmiris understand the sense of loss, I have left home. I understand what you feel about the sense of loss. And I hope you understand what I feel about the sense of loss. And the biggest sense of loss is the loss of philosophy, loss of our way of thinking, loss of our culture. And it is not lost when the new generation is ready to receive these teachings and ready to practice these things. I also am speechless because it's been a long time speaking with the young generation. I think I'm getting really old. And I'm just trying to readjust myself to be relevant, because most of what I would say has already been said. And that is very amazing. So I will discuss today only briefly 3 aspects from the teachings of Abhinavagupta. One is the fusion of Vedic and Tantric literature, a union, a harmony of Vedic and Tantric literature. 2, the fusion of rituals and philosophies. And 3, the fusion of spiritual or religious experience with the everyday experience and everyday emotions and everyday feelings. Our society is divided and our leaders are divisive, and our own life is fragmented and we pay more attention to the crowd that shouts loud and teaches hatred. And but if you read Abhinavagupta, you see how immense love is distilled in his words and truth and experience, and how we can glean those teachings of love is a big task. But I would just share with you the first example of the fusion. The first fusion is the fusion of the Vedic and Tantric. Many scholars in the West believe that there is something called Tantric literature and civilization and culture that is separate from the Vedic, Upanishadic civilization, culture, and philosophy. If you read the contribution of Abhinavagupta, that illusion is immediately dispelled. You can see his work, his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, but beyond that, in many of his works, he has this ease, this freedom to cite from all the traditions, from the Upanishads, so much so even from the Buddhist text, with equal reverence. Not that he does not know his points, not that he's wavering or deviating from his central teachings anywhere. And when necessary, he is also critical of the ideas and the arguments. And that is what constitutes an Acharya tradition.
Simple heart.
Yeah, there was a resonance. So that is what constitutes what I was saying is an Acharya tradition in which our ideas are to be free floating. We need to examine what are wholesome thoughts and what are not wholesome thoughts, what are relevant and what are irrelevant. Tatasya kupoyamiti bruvana ksharam jalam ka purusha pivanti. So let us say our great grandfather dug a well, and then you say, no, this well is made by my grandfather. I know the water is toxic, but I love my grandfather, so I have to drink from it. The only silly people say something like that, right? So, but there is nothing that has been still. That is what makes Acharya Abhinavagupta so unique, that every word of his teaching is as relevant today as it would have been in his own lifetime. And in this regard, as I said, the fusion that he taught from the Vedic and Tantric literature, and that is extremely essential for us to keep thinking today why this is important. Because there has been politics to divide, there has been a cultural misunderstanding to divide, and there has been a scholarly bias to divide. And we who practice these things, who live these things, need to be aware of what is the truth and be bold and, of course, at the same time, reasonable to present our understanding. So this first fusion I just talked about. The second significant fusion I would like to discuss is that of philosophy and rituals. Today, of course, most philosophers are desktop philosophers. They write about things that they have no experience about, So it's a pitiful time that we are scholars of so much of knowledge, and we do not try to implement any of these things in our own life. It's very pathetic, actually. Abhinavagupta taught and lived. He did not merely live and separated his life from actual philosophies and understandings, and he did not preach us what he did not practice. If you read his words, it could have come only through the heart, pulsating heart, filled with these experiences. You can still, after 1,000 years, you can tap that experience. It's not just crafted by the mind, it's crafted by the heart, just coming out of the heart, surging, pulsating. And that is the ability one gets when one has deepened experience to such extent, to such depth, then that makes him unique, that he taught and lived together. And many of us today think that I already studied philosophy, I know all these great philosophies, so what is the point of rituals? Rituals are dogmatic. Only conservative people, people of old generation, rituals are for grandmothers. We can only like ideas, thoughts. We are brilliant people. This arrogance has swept across. And if you really honor Abhinavagupta, try reading Sri Tantra Sara, very easy book, simplified book. And Tantra Loka, of course, a bit lengthy, but of course, very meaningful. You will see he has paid more attention, 10 times more attention to understand and analyze and contextualize rituals than simply laying the foundation for philosophies. Trika rituals, there are many books coming from the Kubjika tradition discussed here. And of course, Paratrishika, Tantravattadhanika, you can read those texts where the whole system of para is both philosophized, but he's not just philosophizing something bereft of experience. It's sapped with, filled with experience that comes only when you actually engage. And that is where I also have a deep dissent with modern conservative, conservist scholars who work for cultural conservation. And I worked when in Nepal, just as an undergraduate student, and even much later, in some of these, in the National Archives, for the conservation of the manuscripts, because in Nepal, fortunately, we have a tremendous amount of tantric literature in the manuscript forms. And when I first joined, I was excited because, hey, I mean, we are gonna catalog, we are gonna microfilm, and we are gonna, but then that is it. They don't want to go beyond that. And mostly Western scholars in particular, but also our own scholars sometimes think that we have already conserved these things. Now these manuscripts are not lost. We have copied them. We have, microfilmed them, and maybe we will even translate them, and then voila. Ideas are not meant for the museums. You can put a dinosaur bone there and say, dinosaurs used to live here, whatever million years ago, and such and so. Ideas are to be lived. You live an idea, and that is how you conserve. You live a ritual, and that is how you conserve, not by putting them in museum. I'm not saying that there should be no effort to cataloging and microfilming, and of course that is absolutely relevant, and of course there are many texts endangered, even the texts which were not burned down, even the texts which were not buried under and could never have been recovered, even those texts that are still available, that are being vanished because of ignorance and because of carelessness, and we need to do that. I have myself pulled out from the fire the books the families were ready to burn down alongside their grandfather. Saying like, we can't read his books, and what is the use? We don't want to make it impure, so offer to Lord Agni Deva. Look at this depravity. So this awareness needs to be there. But at the same time, if we do not think that our new generation should practice these things, should live these things, should bring those experiences to life, then we are not really going to conserve these things. That is where cultural conservation comes about. And these ideas, many people give lip service to say that these ideas are great, his philosophies are great, but when it comes to, as a scholar, that is, I'm complaining from my side, as a scholar, when we see, and then they're only appropriating, they're only using these as scrape raw materials to put in a box and to fit in the global narrative of the West. Living in the West, I myself have felt in so many occasions, speechless, because the type of scholarship that is required today is a lived scholarship that tries to reanimate these experiences and learn from the people who have been practicing these things and hone these experiences and offer to the world an alternative way, that the old way that people have forgotten and is still relevant. When I grew up in a village, people used to still keep fire and in the coal form, and it's all buried under the ashes. And in the morning, if you come to the fireplace, you do not even see fire, and you may as well start new fire. This is so old, most of you would have no idea what I'm talking about. But then my grandma would just dig out like a bunch of coals there. She would put little dry leaves and then start the fire. As long as idea is lived, even by one person, it is like fire. All we need is dry wood, and it can incinerate as much of wood as you give. So fire is not counted as 1, 2, 3, 4. It's meaningless. It's just a spark, and then you have the entire house warm. You can cook, and so many ways you can appreciate it. Ideas, Gyanagni. Also in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says Gyanagni, Chidagni Kunda Sambhuta. So you see, in the name of the mother, she is called Chid Agni Kunda Sambhuta, who originates from the fire pit of pure consciousness. So that the knowledge is of the form of fire. So this fire needs to be kept alive. It's not about writing the history of once upon a time they used to have fire and people have no idea what fire is. It's not like that. So this is the knowledge that needs to be lived and exercised. And in that, many things relate to ritual life. Why is he ritualizing Trika? Why is para, 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 and apara practiced in a particular distinctive way? Many scholars in the West tell me that, he has philosophized so much that I want to go to original tantras, only the old one. But what he has philosophized is not out of his whim, out of his fancy, because he has again and again buttressed his arguments on the basis of the text, on the basis of the agamas. And so what he has written is what his teachers shared with him and what he learned and developed by practicing those ideas, living those ideas. And oftentimes it goes beyond these framed models, and sometimes I myself get shocked of the para, and it's above. What is the transcendence of Kala Samkarshini. What does it even mean that she's seated on this trident of para, 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 and apara? Let us say, that if you consider para as Advaita, absolute non-dualism, and then you can see already this para, apara coming with dualism and non-dualism, and apara, then of course what is remaining is the dualistic philosophies. And it gives me the sense that he was not simply synthesizing a few agamas, what some acharyas have said. You can read starting from Acharya Somananda, and you see the thrust living in Somananda himself, the will, the desire to embrace and integrate the Saiva Siddhanta text and Raudra, Bhairava, all the agamas. And so this is what a real fusion of all tantras looks like. And that is what needs to be brought to our mind and our heart and has to be practiced. And there is nothing to be worried or embarrassed about it. And I hope my new generation of students do understand these things, that just because we are taught in the schools or told by some people that this is superior and this is inferior, we should not buy those corrupt ideas, and we should be always focused in our mind of how did acharyas think about these ideas? How did Abhinavagupta think about these ideas? How did our acharyas who lived these teachings taught us? And so start our experience and analysis on that background. The third aspect I would like to synthesize is the synthesis of the absolute, transcendent, spiritual, religious experience with the mundane, worldly experiences, the experiences coming in every day. When he sat to write a commentary, he says, Natad astiha yadnasti malini vijayotare. When he started composing Sri Tantraloka, he says that there is nothing here that I have said which is not already there in Sri Malini Vijaya Tantra. But he just, after, he just exhausted his ideas and said, oh my gosh, there is so much I couldn't even say. Let me try again. And then you know what, how far he went? He wrote a Vartika, Malini Vijaya Vartika, and he sat there and just he said, Vimala Kala Sraya Abhinava Srishti Mahajanani. This is like Jayanti Jagadananda Vipaksha Kshapana Kshama Paramesha Mukhodbhuta Jnana Chandra Maricha. You can pretty much say that book is just a commentary upon this single verse. I mean, you could say, oh, then he was lost. No, it's like he's trying to show us how deep the Shastras are and how careful we have to be when you say it is not taught there, it is not there. We just fail to see, Just because we can't appreciate a rose doesn't mean a rose is not a rose. Just because we appreciate in a very different way, like you offer a rose to a buffalo and buffalo will be happy. You can give a rose to your girlfriend and she will also be happy, but for completely different reasons, For someone it's just food to something to chew on, So it's like appreciating things for what they are. And for some, it means something else, an object to eat. And for others is to revere and to appreciate. And talking about the experiences that Abhinavagupta distilled there, it's what we find is this surge of emotions, like in the context of Ananda, bliss. That was the point. I should not get carried away. The idea is of rasa. What is the relationship of rasa, aesthetics, with all these esoteric teachings, Ashta Bhairavas, Ashta Matrikas, and then he adds this is the central, Bhairava at the center, and this Yogini Mahayogini at the center, and then constituting 9. And he discusses Shantarasa that many people do not even want to talk about, how the experience of serenity itself is rasa. But these things, what you will find amazing is he's relating without repeatedly saying, only by indication, he's relating these aesthetic modes of emotion with the absolute. And this is where you can find that is in the discussion on chamatkara, because what happens is this awe, this wonder, and this reflexivity when you have judged your own emotional surge and coarse raw emotions, when you have refined them, are re-evaluated, you play out in your head, and then you see that even these emotions are to be of the status of rasa, like a disgust, vibhatsa, you know, terror, of fury, of raudra. So there are some emotions we would generally say, oh, these are very negative feelings, you know, to be, how could being angry be enjoyable, or give this aesthetic bliss? How can disgust be enjoyable and have that absolute aesthetic bliss? And you know how it can be is, look at the rituals. You look at the images, forget rituals, because many of you have no idea, right? So I'm sorry, but look at the images. If you see Chamunda, you know, with her entrails, she's swollen and wearing these freshly chopped heads, blood oozing out, and she's so black and dark, and everything is like rotten flesh and goblins around, and then disgusting. But is Kali disgusting? No, she transcends the sense of disgust. Is she horrifying? She is horrifying, of course, to the demons, you know, but not to us. She is the mother. You know, sometimes when your mother is very angry, upset, and yes, you still go to embrace her, you know, and then she will forget her anger. But yes, if you are anyway vulnerable, if someone tries to hurt you, and mother's anger has no bounds, you see. So you see love in that terror. You see your heart melts in that expression of disgust in seeing Chamunda, seeing Bhairava. You know, Abhinavagupta repeatedly talks about Bhairava. And if you read the description of Bhairava, if you read the description of Kali, and then you have to wonder, why are these images depicted in such ways? He could have just made a beautiful Tripura Sundari and not talk about anything else. These days we are doing those things though, because we can't face the truth. You know, we are embarrassed of the truth, the absolute, and we are clueless too, because somehow we are used to just talking and speaking and not taking to heart what we say. I'm sorry, again, it is a little bit harsh way for me to say something like that, but what does it mean to embrace these things? We are so domesticated. We have been told what is good and what is bad, and Victorian ideals and ideas of the colonizers, and we appropriate ideas that are good for a non-Hindu civilization as good ideas, good ways of living, appropriate norms. All our norms have to be evaluated based on the British norms. This is ridiculous. Let us re-evaluate the global norms based on the philosophy of Abhinavagupta. Why can't we reinterpret the world, the global experiences, aesthetic modes, cultural interpretations, rituals, philosophies, aesthetics, again, based on how Abhinavagupta would recontextualize and write commentary after commentary upon all these cultures and their philosophies and their teachings? That is what you young generation people are meant to do. I hope besides doing amazing things in your scholarship, you will keep these ideas in your heart and not forget it after you made an amazing presentation. Running, of course, you will have to do so many other presentations, but some of these things are real, serious. And not everything in life comes this real and this serious. And fortunately, many ideas which were at the face of extinction have been brought back to life, and many people who have done amazing work for these conservation efforts, and they all need to be applauded. And Jai Gurudev, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Not much to say, but to witness that there is hope alive. Thank you so much. And you can ask any questions if we have time. I'm here.
Thank you, Acharya ji. Really, I have no words to thank you, because your words were like like a cherry on the cake. Because you summed it so nicely that it's important that we not only understand the teachings of Mahamaheshwara Abhinavagupta, but it's also important that we distill it and implement in our day-to-day lives. That's how we can carry on this tradition of Mahamaheshwara Abhinavagupta throughout our life. I leave it to people if somebody has to ask any questions. Dr. Mahesh, you want to say something, or anybody else? Please raise their hand and ask the question. Yeah, Dr. Mahesh, please.
Uh, uh, Pranam. First of all, it was a very exhilarating, comprehensive package today. I must say we had a hope against hope when we witnessed our children. And as Professor Thimalsina has rightly said, that hope is alive. And this is a blessing, as rightly said by Professor Sthaneshwar Timalsina. And the way he was also speaking in his childlike innocence, I could witness Abhinavagupta speaking through him. Abhinava, like he is always new, new, and new, presenting everything which is already there, but experimenting with the new. I could witness Professor Thimal Sena speaking in his childlike innocence, which was, I can say, representative of the Abhinav Gupta's whole cosmic, you can say, vibrations. And he was not speaking like a scholar, but like a sadhaka. That was a wonderful thing. He was not speaking like an academician, but like a person who was being directly blessed by the Shaktipat, and we could witness that vibration throughout the cosmos. And very important point put forward by Professor Thimal Sena is that we have to see Abhinav Gupta's whole ecosystem aesthetics in the decolonized mind. That is how the anti-Hindu thought, how the anti-Hindu constructs have been used. But more important is that over the years, academics, the way they have been formed, the formulations, how they have been made, we have been made to express the Indic civilizational values, whether it's Tantra, it's Agama or Nigama, in a system which doesn't help you here, because this is a system of realization. Realization and academics, as Abhinav Gupta did, we have to move in tandem. We cannot use this thing in westernized thing and give the outcomes. Our whole system is such eternal and expansive that there we cannot use this in watertight that compartments, as Abhinav Gupta himself cannot be used in watertight compartments. So the whole things, whether it's Tantra or any Indic tradition, whether Vedic or Upanishadic, you have to be open, you have to be receptive, and only then you can express it. The bad thing is that we use these, you can see Semitic models, and these Semitic models have a very different tradition in academically. When we use something which is already programmed, it will give you results which are not in consonance with the thought process of consciousness of Tantra, whether it is Trika philosophy or any other Indic system. So that way, Professor Thimal Sena has underlined a very important point. Like Sri Aurobindo used to say, that Indic tradition cannot be understood by using the kind of hypothesis testing and null hypothesis and positive hypothesis. It is something which is realization. And today it was so wonderful to see in such innocent ways, such pure way that Professor Thimal Sena expressed this very, very difficult, or I must not say difficult, but very, very secretive science in a childlike innocence. That is the essence of Abhinavagupta. My pranams to Professor Timalsina. It was so wonderful of you, sir.
Thank you, Mahesh Bhai. I really appreciate it.
Hello, can I ask a question? Hello, Professor Sthaneshwar
Yeah,
Timalsina.
Mr. Sadanand, please go ahead.
I have a small question. Sir, you have rightly pointed out the necessity of recontextualization of Abhinavagupta's philosophy uh, in the present day world. Recontext, we have to do it. Sir, don't you think that our young presenters of today, they have already started it? Isn't it so? Number one question. Number two is, we have to practice not only from our inside, but also in the outside, the external. The Laugika and Alaugika both are important, isn't it so? Or do you differ? Thank you.
Agree on both accounts. Yes, I saw how Ayuda addressed in her presentation some of the ethical, moral questions that is already trying to develop a model, application, an outcome of that philosophy, and so many other students I heard. It is happening. Our challenge next then is how to bring this to the global stage. Our problems are manifold. When we think that our ideas are conserved by making it conserved in a village, that is old model that used to work one time. My Guruji said, Ramji Malviyaji, who passed away 3 months ago, Beta, why do you need to go to Nepal? Let me just give you a job here. And it is maybe 20, 30 times more money than what you can get in Nepal. I said, Guruji, what is my first obligation? Because in Nepal, these teachings are not there. If I go start a department, then these teachings will be brought to life. He gave me his blessings. And I went there and fought against the tides for like 8, 9 years. What I realized is I don't have that much of strength, energy to fight against the whole society, the Maoists and the communists who are so dedicated to uproot the system, and everyday confrontation, so much so that in my classroom, while teaching my students, I was assaulted. I carry this deep scar in my head. And I said, enough is enough. First need to save life. But also, the old model that we can conserve our ideas by being isolationist, I had to rethink. And then I allowed myself to go to the Western school for the first time in my life. I got all my education in Gurukula. All my degrees came while living in ashrams. And then I opened myself to go to Germany and get a PhD because I deeply felt in my heart that without understanding Western ways, I cannot do anything towards cultural conservation. And it was a big challenge. Without going to English school for even one day, I had to write my PhD dissertation, you see? I first tried in German language. I found it even more difficult. Anyway, the globe is home today. You are in all different parts of India, and many other friends from different parts of the globe have joined us. And we are discussing these ideas of their pristine form in a global forum. So every effort is global. So we have to bring these ideas to global academy. That is the way I think. And then it will allow these modes of these ideas to be lived and practiced at homes Otherwise, we keep telling our kids it's great, and then they go and assimilate in a wider culture, and then they don't even know how much to absorb, how much not to, and by the time they are big enough, we don't even recognize them. They are so different. And I have felt that in my own life.
Very true. Very true.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Madam
Namaste.
Ranshri, you wanted to ask a question?
Yes, yes. Namaste. This is Dr. Rajshri Vasudevan from Chennai. My doctoral thesis was actually on the philosophical founders in the Abhinavagupta, because I'm also established that he has made independent contribution to aesthetics. But I find there is a constant charge against Abhinavagupta that both his major works, Abhinavabharati and the Lochana, were commentaries on already written works. So can you throw some light on that? Because it has been kind of an uphill task trying to establish that his contribution to aesthetics is absolutely unique, and it is something which cannot be brushed aside as just that of a commentator. Thank you so much.
What we have, Rajashree, are the words borrowed from our ancestors, experiences relived, what is given by our teachers. We come with humility. We do not come with the arrogance that everything is brand new. In the West, there is this rush to corporatize, and what they call, I forgot the name for that. You have this brand you create and you claim this is yours. It's your invention, it's your idea. And our acharyas have the opposite. Forget Abhinavagupta, he was at least nice enough to put his name under his works. Many, many, many acharyas just composed and removed their name, because that ego, that arrogance as the creator didn't exist there. We live refined. That is one challenge, only because it's a new paradigm in which we are confronted that he just wrote a commentary, and some of these words are not even in the original, because they fail to understand what the process of writing commentary itself is. All the new ideas are there. We just need to compare and derive. But we never understood creativity in that way that the West has claimed, because if you read again, every idea is like there is a root. Where is it coming from? Let's go to the Bible. Let's start digging out what creation means. Creation ex nihilo. If you are creating, you have to create from something that didn't exist out there. So the God's creation is completely new. It is not that there was some kind of world or material and then he used and to make the world. God didn't need anything. So if you are a creator, then you have to have the same type of, even in a small scale, creation ex nihilo. It is brand new. You are giving something that didn't exist before. And then our rishis think, na sato vidyate bhava, na bhavo vidyate sata, ubhairapi drishtanta stanayastatadarshibhi. Something that never existed, you cannot bring it to existence. And something that existed, you cannot annihilate it. It will continue to be reformed and formed again, morphed again and again. So Abhinavagupta says it's a new arrangement. When we talk about creativity, on one hand, he's talking about pratibha, nava unmesha. But on the other hand, he's also saying that what becomes new is the arrangement. He's not inventing words. He's using those words. He doesn't claim he's inventing ideas either. He's just simply saying, I'm arranging these ideas. They are already there. And it comes with humility. In spite of so much of newness as a scholar, when you see, you can see, and he could very well have written that same text without citing those books and without comparing, contrasting word meanings, and then have that same book and then called Abhinava's philosophy of aesthetics. And, and that is not what acharyas do. That is where the humility lies. That is our mode of thinking. That is our ways of thinking. We do not we never needed to just say, this is my creation, okay? No, it was not necessary. And if you have refined new ideas, they were appreciated just the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajji. I request Professor Sudhi Sopuriji to thank the Professor Sthaneshwar. Yeah.
Sunilji?
Yeah. Sandeepji, yes.
Yes. Namaskar, Sthaneshwar ji. I am a big fan of yours, and I am also, sir, in your group. Recently, I read your note on essay on Shantaras by Abhinavagupta, wherein you had, given all the details. You had given the expositions, the logic of Nyaya, Buddhist, and all those things, and it was simply brilliant. And there is one essay of yours which I like the most. That is wherein you have explained Aham in terms of Prakash Vimarsh, Para, Apara, and Parapara. And you have also experienced it in, there is another, three ways you have explained it. I liked it very much, sir. And I sir, really feel that you are a sadhak and a scholar. Really, sir. Sir, my question here is, like you said, you very well said that we need to preserve our rituals also. But when it comes to Kashmir Shaivism, we hardly know anyone who actually practice these rituals. Sir, we have, like, there are some rituals given in Paraparaveshika. There is some ritual given in wherein you have to, some, for your choti itself, there are several mantras, and they look sort of, they look like they have no meaning. Sir, I would like to know from you, when, you very well said, and I totally agree with you, that we need to preserve our rituals also. But sir, how can we preserve the tantric rituals that has been given to us by Abhinavagupta? Sir.
Thank you. You will be amazed at what happens when cultures were not assaulted by the outside forces. People in Nepal are not philosophically oriented. I am sorry if someone is offended. People in Nepal are just interested in practicing things. And what happened? Any things went there, they just simply practiced those things. So most of the practices, like related to Kubjika, for example, many of the systems within Kubjika incorporate the Trika system. You can find all the Trika manuals. Even in my own Amnaya, the Guru's taught in Chinchini Mata, for example, there is an integration of the Trika deities, the whole Trika ritual at the same time, Kubjika and and Kali at the same time of Tripura Sundari. So it is not that these are vanished. It is just that the broader community was not deeply interested in it, and our job is to make them aware of it. Many places, like if you see the earliest manuals of the Kashmiri practice, you see the practices begin with Siddha Lakshmi. And when we consult Nepalese practices, for example, Uttara Amnaya, the northern transmission of Kali, does not even begin without Siddhi Lakshmi. And we have 3 different temples in the valley of Kathmandu, even the tallest one in Bhaktapur dedicated to Siddhi Lakshmi. So these practices are kept alive, practiced, and not all the biggest challenge I don't see is the lack of practice, But the real challenge is those people who are practicing have left philosophies aside, and those people doing philosophy have abandoned rituals. And so the real urge for today is, I wish we had more of Shankara Chaitanya Bharati, and I wish Shankara Chaitanya Bharati in his own lifetime was not Lord Bhairava Sakshat, because he would beat like hell and nobody would want to come to him. And it is just like years and years and years of grueling examinations and testing, and only then, if you are extremely lucky, you will teach a little bit. And so but I would not say that those teachers are not there. The challenge today is anyone who comes to limelight claiming, these things are very less knowledgeable than the people who are hiding themselves in the cave and feel like they should better invest their time, because rituals take a lot of time. And I can say, I can agree, Sandeep, with you that it's not possible for someone to actually do all the practices, because then, like it's not just one agama. And even in a single agama, if you say Kubjika Mata, for example, and then when you start reading the rituals, there are so many. And so, but you don't need to practice everything. You should practice some of the essential things, like in the Kalikrama. That practice is very much alive, I tell you, Sandeep, because I'm alive. And I'm sorry to be so upfront, but I feel this is my home, and somewhere we have to really be open about it. The Kalika Krama is very much alive. So what Abhinavagupta discussed in chapter 4 is very much lived right here in San Diego. I'm not saying it's not elsewhere, of course, in many other places, but I've never left them. How can, what is the point of living a life and not having the continuity of, I had to wait for 12 years to be qualified, to be called qualified by my teachers, after grueling exams every day, tedious, and being beaten up, again and again. I'm sorry, young kids, those were the old days. And and then I know the value. I know how much I had to, give to learn these things. So, and these days, people go buy these things for $50 or $100, and there is no value to it. And therefore, yes, there was a point why these were meant so valuable, and why people had to grow perseverance and had to have actual tapas to get anything, and how teachers had to test people again and again, instead of, hey, here is the way, by the way, and these are the rates for these practices. No, that's not how acharyas ever would do, or this disgusting. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But yes, I'm thankful that you feel the same way about conservation of cultures in light of ritual conservation. But yes, we can bring to life, because they are not completely like, bring to life would be a wrong word. It's not like reviving a dead body, but it's like there is life there. It's just not pronounced out, and there are very few people. But yes, the mainstream can catch up anytime. It's still alive. Thank you.